Welcome to the Dragon's Den. I'm your venerable host Orochi, and today we're going to talking about Pathfinder stuff, specifically Book of the Dead. This recent release has a lot of content that you are not ever going to use in your games. That's kind of the theme here. Is like none of this stuff is going to see use in most people's games. Because unless you are going to allow for your characters to use undead as playable options, most of the good stuff in this is going to be well out of the reach of most players and well off theme. If you plan on doing abomination vaults or do custom home content that includes a lot of undead, there are some really nice undead hunters and anti-undead options, so that's something you could definitely squeeze into something. But generally, how often are you doing campaigns like Abomination Vaults where you're going to be running into a lot of undead? Where that's going to be your entire focus is just being a hunter of the dead. It can work, but me personally, I'm not really interested in characters that are like super hyper focused and only fitting into like certain games where like, oh, I can only fight, corporeal undead. That's my thing. I'm bad at literally everything else. That kind of stuff has never appealed to me. Like, there's a lot of old D&D modules where it's just, this flavor or that flavor, and you know exactly what you're going to be fighting the vast majority of the time, and you can just custom build a character to counter those kinds of things. I've always hated games like that. I always hate when you can just build a character that you know is going to be exceptionally good at everything you come across in an adventure. That, to me, takes away from like most of the interesting parts and the surprise of the adventure when you just know you're going to be good at everything. But with that in mind, you can pick this book up because a lot of the stuff in here is super cool. It's just very interesting kind of stuff. A lot of the lore in this is all from the perspective of Geb and his his personal notebook from when he was alive through his more recent time as having settled into undead life and having figured things out over, centuries. And I think that's a really cool, interesting idea. But it also kind of means there's got to be there's bound to be lots of other different perspectives on all this sort of stuff, and it's sort of giving you just like a one-sided kind of look just from his course through it all. But it's still really interesting. And it's sectioned out. You got the first part is his talks about when he was alive, and here's where you get the undead hunters, and you get lots of new backgrounds. You've got a whole bunch of items and archetypes and things that will help you on your journey to destroy undead. And then here you've got a whole bunch of reasonings for how you would get undead allies, because you're given archetypes for having undead companions, undead familiars, and there's an undead eidolon in there. You've got all of these archetypes for, hey, if you die because you were killed by a ghoul, you can come back as a ghoul, or if you were killed by necromantic energy, you can become a zombie, and how to pick up these undead types through your adventures, which is really interesting. And they also have the idea of, oh, you can just play from the start as a skeleton. It's an ancestry in and of itself. It's like if you were a person with a strong personality, then even when turned into an undead, you It's sort of like playing an amnesiac character where you can remember certain things about yourself, but you're separated from your previous life by this gulf that you have to overcome and figure out who and what you are now, which that can be interesting for a whole lot of different character stories you could tell. And then new challenges that you could make in haunts. There's a whole bunch of different haunts on here, because that's what, nearly 8 pages of haunts. Yeah, lots of stuff to kill your players with, and haunts are never fun. Like, I haven't come across a single one going through Abomination Vaults or Age of Ashes or Fist of the Ruby Phoenix where haunts were fun. It's either somebody in your party has the skill you need to get over this thing, or you find out a way to do violence against it to win, or you just don't. You just don't. And it either kills you or you go somewhere else. And I don't think that's really, as a challenge, I don't think those are compelling things at all. Like, haunts really need to have like 10 different skills to get over it of widely varying difficulties. Where it's like, yeah, if you have the one skill to get over it, you should be able to do it pretty easily. But if you have any of these other plethora of skills that are sort of workable, if you can, think of a cool way to do it, then the DC should be much higher, but still doable. Whereas a lot of them we've run into in my groups, it's kind of like, hey, if you're good at the skill, you have like a small chance to beat this thing, and nobody else has those skills, so you have to roll a 20. And especially in Rise of the Ruby Phoenix, they were like, oh, these things do damage to you every turn until you roll that 20, and that was really not fun. And after like 6 or 7 rounds of that sort of stuff, our GM was kind of just like, yeah, just hit it and you'll win. Just do some damage to it and eventually you'll win. Because this is, he saw that we were going to die to this fucking thing. And it was just like, yeah, that's not entertaining. So there's a lot more of them. Hopefully, I haven't looked at all the specifics of these. Hopefully they're written better than a lot of the adventure ones. But there's stuff here to kill your players with. And then in here we have all kinds of new stuff, new enemies, and all of this fun things. I haven't gone over most of the back part of this book. I got through most of the usable things for players, and that's where I got stuck, because these are so cool. And my first thing, of course, hopefully the players or GM from my game don't see this for the next game, I wanted to combine the new stuff that Mark has made with dragons with the Lich archetype, because I want to make a Dragolich. That will be the next character that I want to play in one of the campaigns, depending on what we do next. I don't even know if there's something we could do where I could fit that in without it being a really bad fit. But we shall see. I want to play a character that slowly slides down into Crazy Town to become a Lich eventually. That sounds entertaining to me. But it's sort of a relatively small book. I think it's cheap. It was only like $30 or $40. So if you think you're ever going to have a use for some of this stuff, then totally pick it up. These are really cool options. They're fun. They don't have, as with usual Pathfinder stuff, a lot of the powers and stuff aren't going to blow your mind off or anything, but they're very thematic. They're very cool. And you could make a lot of interesting characters with all these building pieces. So I would definitely say, yes, go and pick this up. Super good stuff. And if you don't want to buy the book, but you should, go on to Pathbuilder. It's already up on Pathbuilder. All the options are already on there. And go ahead and make yourself some cool undead characters or undead hunters. especially if you're going to be playing Abomination Vaults. Pick up some of the Hunters of the Dead stuff. It's very cool stuff. And that is all for now. Have a great evening.